The support for a new nuclear power station on Anglesey by the Plaid Cymru and Labour leaders Ieuan Wyn-Jones and Carwyn Jones is another example of not thinking about the future. It looks like the height of political opportunism as they battle over the Assembly and parliamentary seats on the island. Aside from concerns about the disposal of nuclear waste and possible accidents, in the current economic climate, investment is in short supply, and every pound spent on nuclear is a pound lost to developing clean, renewable energy. At a time when we should be encouraging people out of planes and onto public transport, the Plaid leader has increased public funding for the Anglesey to Cardiff Airlink, which is his journey to work, to £120,000, while the very popular Wrexham and Shropshire railway service to London has been forced to close. Wales, with the support of the Welsh Assembly, has stood out as a beacon in the fight to stop the spread of GM food, with thousands of agricultural jobs dependent on the organic GM-free certification in Wales and across the UK. However, we have heard this week that a Plaid Cymru minister in the Assembly is now open to the use of GM in Wales. The Foss of Ran mine near Merthyr Tydfil was opened with some of the slackest control measures for open-cast mines. Merthyr already has some of the most deprived communities and poor health in Wales, and the mine was agreed just 35 metres from people's homes. If this was not enough, there are plans for a huge waste incinerator in Merthyr and Cardiff. The Merthyr incinerator alone could consume all the waste produced in homes in Wales, threatening recycling targets, increasing air pollution and greenhouse emissions. We must tackle TB and support our farmers, the mainstay of our Welsh rural communities and language. But the badger cull proposed by the Assembly is not the answer when a vaccination programme is available. Let's be clear, sitting on the fence or keeping quiet over these issues is equivalent to giving your support. Green politics has always been about long-term thinking, and never has this been more relevant when the Conservative Liberal Democrat government is taking the axe to public services in the name of short-term reductions in the deficit. With more people out of work as a result of deep cuts, government coffers will have less tax revenue and will be paying more in benefits. And just as in Ireland, the deficit could in fact become bigger in the long term as a result. The last thing we want is more people without work for longer. Many communities in Wales have not recovered from the excesses of the last Tory government. We all remember Norman Tebbutt's On Your Bike speech in the 1980s. Well, some of you might do if you're as old as me. This week, he told the people of Merthyr they should move out of their communities to find jobs. It's been 30 years since his first comments, and all the Tories can come up with is the same old rhetoric that has so decimated our communities in the past. I'm not prepared to stand by while this government's policies lay ruin to the heart of Wales. If elected as one of the first Greens to the Assembly in May, I will stand up for public services. I will argue for the approach Wales desperately needs, not a here today, gone tomorrow attitude to jobs, public services and the environment, but at sensible policies that will ensure our long-term well-being. We need to ensure a lasting economic renewal through development of the low-carbon economy. An army of workers, 50,000 we estimate, could be employed to help plug our leaky homes, install renewable energy systems and develop public transport infrastructure. The irony of having fallen so far behind many other countries in moving towards a low-carbon economy is we can avoid their mistakes and adopt their best practices quickly if the political will is there. We must work with local businesses to develop an economic strategy that grows local businesses. We must provide support to businesses that does not change from one year to the next, that helps local businesses secure public service contracts here in Wales. We want to keep jobs in the rural economy, supporting small shops and reining in the power of the supermarkets, and protecting rural schools, the hub of community places like Gwynedd and of Ceredigion. For all the faults of the Labour-Plaid government, we are proud that Wales is able to resist most of the savage attempts to dismantle the welfare state and the values it embodies. The NHS remains broadly in line with the vision Nye Bevan had, and we have no state-subsidised academies or free schools that reinforce class divisions here in Wales. We must build a broad coalition of other political parties, trade unions and community organisations to defend the welfare state against the ideological attacks by the condemned government. I support our public services and will work in the Assembly to ensure they continue to serve the public, not the interests of private profit. Following the record of Liberal Democrats in supporting cuts in public expenditure and services, and the Conservatives' newly announced privatisation programme, would you trust the Welsh Liberal Democrats not to do likewise if elected here? This is why it is so crucial that Wales votes yes on March the 3rd, so that laws affecting Wales are made in Wales and will strengthen our ability to take a different course to the Tory Lib Dem attacks on our livelihoods and the callous values they embody. I know how people are feeling now that the Tories are back in power. I cut my political teeth campaigning against Thatcher on things like the poll tax, Greenham Common, and I know many people who have been unhappy with Labour in the past will now be considering them again. But we know they haven't really changed. Ed Miliband provides hollow opposition to the government's policies, whilst right here in South Wales, a Labour council, Rhondda Cynon Taf, is threatening its workers with thousands of compulsory redundancies unless its mostly modestly paid staff accept cuts in allowances and other schemes which will hit their pay significantly without negotiation. We stand side by side with the staff at RCT in their fight to defend their jobs and livelihoods.